This is the Khmer Times News. My name is Paolo Bonini, and these are your headlines. A US citizen has been kidnapped and tortured. 5 men play at being cops, then they meet real cops and wish they had not. And a father and son batter an old lady to death with an iron bar due to wandering chickens. But firstly, it's our headline story, and it's a dramatic case of how an American man was kidnapped and tortured to get his family to pay a ransom. Authorities announced this week that they have rescued a US citizen who was kidnapped in Thailand and then transported to Cambodia. The man was staying in Bangkok when one evening a gang of men snatched him. He was tied, blindfolded, and held hostage. After some time, he was thrown into a vehicle and then driven over the border to Cambodia. His disappearance, of course, did not go unnoticed, and authorities launched an operation to find the missing American. With the help of his family and probably some jolly clever electronic track and trace software, the victim was found and released from his brutal kidnappers. The story the man told was incredible. He said he was tricked by a Taiwanese-Chinese criminal group that were based in Thailand, and they had fooled him into traveling to Bangkok to attend the opening of a bakery. When he arrived at the event, he was given a drink that was drugged, and it was not long before he passed out. The kidnappers kept him sedated, and they transported him to Cambodia, where they repeatedly tortured him by beating him and burning him with cigarettes. As they ramped up the pain, they put more and more pressure on the man's family to pay the ransom. But the ransom was never to come, as the family had called in the police, and the electronic clues these kidnappers left were enough for the police to launch a daring raid to release the hostage. It is remarkable to think one could attend something as innocent as the opening of a bakery only to be drugged, shipped across an international border, and then violently tortured by men you have never met before. It is, maybe, very fortunate that this man escaped with his life. On this week's Crime Desk, father and son brutally batter old lady to death, and it's all about chickens. Fake cops meet real cops. They also meet a real jail. And a man goes a-killing, kitted out, just like Bruce Willis. Got some good stories this week. Here goes. A father and son were arrested and charged this week for the murder of a 68-year-old widow. The 2 men clubbed the old lady to death with a steel bar. They had waited for the old woman to leave her house. They then followed her, and among the trees they violently forced her to the ground and started raining blows down on her aged body with the iron bar. Blood splattered the trees as she raised her frail arms in a vain attempt to protect herself from the 2 exceedingly brutal men. But no matter how she tried, she was soon to be overcome by their unbelievable violence. After they had beaten her to death, the father and son then scooped up the bloodied body and carried it to a cemetery on the outskirts of the village. They placed the corpse in the corner of the cemetery and they then fled the scene. Now, as to why they did this makes absolutely no sense at all, as just putting a body in a cemetery does not make it invisible. And to the surprise of absolutely nobody, it was discovered only a couple of short hours later. Why they dumped the blood-soaked corpse in such an obvious place, of course, is a mystery, but that is not the only mystery, as police investigations revealed the reason for this crime. And it turns out the old lady was murdered due to wandering chickens. You see, the victim had had a long-standing dispute with the murderers, saying that their chickens frequently entered her property and they damaged her crops. Some of those wandering chickens had in fact recently died, and the men had accused the old lady of killing them. So yet another chicken-related row had broken out, and it was then the man planned to kill the old lady, who they blamed for the death of their chickens. And so it was. A father and son beat an old lady to death, and now they sit in jail together, awaiting a court date. Now, I'm going to give you a quick lesson in crime. Do you know how crime works? Well, it's really very simple. The whole point of being a criminal is to make money, nothing else. So one is always looking for the crime that would yield the highest return with the lowest risk. But the big problem is most criminals do not seem to understand that simple equation. And so it was with these 5 men who could never be accused of being intellectually well endowed, because what they did completely ignores the first rule of crime. You see, they all decided it would be a jolly good idea to impersonate military police officers and then go around mop-handed demanding money. Now, the problem with that is you're out in the open, everybody sees you. Every CCTV camera records you, and there's absolutely no doubt you will get nicked. It's only a matter of time. Add to that, there is 5 of you, which means you only get 20% of the haul, so it's all really very dumb. But these 5 luminaries of the School of Stupid thought it was a great idea, so they set out in Sihanoukville. Where else? Fully dressed in military police uniform and started demanding money. One guy was stopped and was extorted for $3,000. Others were also stopped, and the gang netted $10,000. Remember though, there is 5 of them, so that's only $2,000 each, which is not a lot for such a serious crime. And it was not long until they were all nicked by men in exactly the same uniforms as them, but these men had a lot more authority. All the crooks are now in jail and are awaiting a court date. Let us all hope they don't turn up dressed as judges. Now to our final story on our crime desk for this week, and we have blades dripping with blood and some good old-fashioned mob justice, where a criminal gets a jolly good kicking from members of the public. And this guy very much deserved it, as he is one extremely dangerous man. Authorities have now confirmed that they have arrested a suspect in a particularly violent murder case. Now right here, I wish to clarify my words by putting photos up on the screen of what this guy used to murder his victims, and you can be the judge if me saying particularly violent is worthy. Well, first there was this. A blade about 12 inches long, enough for any good murder, you would think. But apparently not, as he also took this. Yes, it's a sword. And I know what you're thinking. Yep, a bloody big sword should do the job. But apparently not for our man, as he also took this. A hand axe that has been recently sharpened. Let's face it, there are Russian soldiers in Ukraine with less weapons. According to the local police chief, one morning last week, Mr. Nakri, a 46-year-old man with no job, got in a row with Mr. Savi, a 44-year-old farmer. It seems the two had spent the day drinking, and an argument had broken out. So Mr. Nakri went off and armed himself like he was Bruce Willis, and then returned to hack at Mr. Nakri's face with the sword. After he'd done that, he then stabbed him in the chest. The victim was sent to hospital, but he died en route. The suspect himself then retreated and hid in his brother's house nearby, and the police officers surrounded him. But it was not until 11 p.m. that night that officers could arrest him. And right here is my favourite line from this story, and I will read it as it appeared. Upon the man's arrest, citizens came out and beat the suspect, causing injuries. So it seems a crowd had gathered around the house and waited until the dead of night so they could give him a damn good kicking. Fair enough. The man is now in jail and he faces charges for murder. And we close our news show this week with yet another story of a car driver hitting a motorcyclist and leaving the injured man to die in the road. The headline read, "Driver flees after crushing man to death in Phnom Penh." Now, this accident was extremely gruesome. If you drive a bike, it is that kind of accident that we all dread. It's the one where you actually go under the wheels of the vehicle. It happened to me once in London. I came off my bike on a rainy London afternoon and I slid under a London bus on my back. The bus driver saw me disappear under his vehicle, heading towards those large wheels. I could see the horror on his face, but luckily I had the quickness of mind to put my arms out, and with one almighty thud, I stopped myself from sliding under. I looked down and my leg was literally inches from the bus wheel. I was extremely lucky, but the man in our tale, he was not. It was just 7 p.m. It had only just got dark when a man riding a small Honda Beat motorcycle was driving down the road. A Ford Ranger truck pulled in front of the small bike and the motorcyclist went under the wheel of the large vehicle. The motorcycle driver was crushed by tons of steel, and he died where he lay. The last thing he potentially could have seen was the driver of the car exit his vehicle and run off into the night, leaving him to die on a dark and lonely street. It's time to have a look ahead and see what the weather has in store for us next week.
So here we are at the weather, and as always, let's have our traditional photo of the week. And this is a shot I took myself whilst next to a braai. Now, a braai is where they used to hold water, a reservoir, that's the word, a reservoir of the ancients. And look at that tree with the sun behind it and the beautiful, beautiful sky. It was absolutely wonderful. What a lovely, lovely evening. So there you go, a lovely calming picture. But what is it that the weather tells us, as he pads as always whilst he gets it up? Oh, matron, it's now up. Okay. Let's have a look. Now, what we've got is a high of 76 degrees, which isn't too bad. That's coming at the middle of the week. Obviously, we don't have any rain. We've got cloud, but know this much. In the evenings, it's still getting rather chilly.
This has been the Khmer Times News. Please do subscribe and comment and stay up to date with all the breaking news by following us on both Facebook and Telegram. This has been Paolo Bonini, and that was the week that was. I'll see you next weekend for your weekly roundup.